Okay, hi, my name is Jenny Stafford. I am going to show you my interactive notebook. It is my 7th grade math notebook. I want to show you that there are many different ways that you can use my notebook. You can use a 3-ring binder. This is a 1-inch 3-ring binder. You can also use notebooks. Here's a, we have college ruled. This probably is the best for size. You are allowed to write any comments or extra notes that you would like. It gives you extra room. And you can also use a composition book. The only thing is the composition book won't give you as much room. I prefer using a college ruled or standard size notebook or the 3-ring binder. And I'm going to show you the 3-ring binder today because I have been asked many questions as to can I use a 3-ring binder and how would that look. So here I have a student sample. You can see the cover. You'll be given this cover and your students will fill it out. They will draw pictures, some things that interest them, and color it. I also really like to have their name on the side because I keep their notebooks so in a bookcase, and you can do it by period. This is just a piece of paper students cut and fit into the side of their binder. So let's go ahead, take a look. You will see that I have extra foldables that I put in here. I will go over that a little bit later. But what I always like to start with my students is I like to have my syllabus that explains the class procedures, routines, things like that, so that they always know what's expected of them and how they're going to be graded. I also have a homework checklist. You can actually find this on my store. It is free. Students will write in their assignment and I will go around and I will stamp. Being in a 3-ring binder, it makes it a lot easier to where I can stamp their homework. I keep their homework and they keep this until the 12th assignment, and once they get down to the 12th assignment, if they're all stamped, they get a free homework pass. It's just nice to have inside their binder. It keeps them organized. Okay, so this is where we start with the interactive notebook. Very first page is going to be all about me. I give this to my students on the first day so they can write what their class is, this summer what they did, their favorite colors, food, holiday, things like that. This is just about them to get to know them so that I know a little bit of information. My expectations, my reasons for those expectations, and then I also have students sign it and date it. This is really important for students to have. I go over this so that they know what's expected of them, of their notebook. I want to make sure that they know they're held responsible for keeping this notebook organized and writing all the information that they need, because this will help them throughout the school year. Grading rubric. This is what the teacher will, how the teacher will grade the student's notebook. You will see when you purchase the notebook that I have a, this one right here, I made it out of 10 points for each quarter. There's first quarter, second quarter, third, and fourth. I also have a generic one where you can change the points. So if you don't like it being out of 10 points, you can change it to out of 50 points or so on. It's really nice because you get to leave some comments on what they need to improve or if they did a great job, just so they know how they're doing with their notebook. Math reference sheet. This will help students during the school year. I have students fill out the multiplication table. It gives some information on geometry objects, 3-dimensional objects, integers, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing integers, gives some other information about area, conversions, and angles, so they can use this as a reference. My goals. I did not fill this one out, but I want you to know that it's very important for students to set goals, and I made it to where they can set a goal each quarter. So there's first quarter, second, third, and fourth. They're going to write down what their goals are for the quarter, why it is important for them to achieve those goals, and how they will achieve those goals. So let's say they fill this out for first quarter. Then what they're going to do is, after the quarter is up, they're going to look back and they're going to say, okay, well, what were my goals? Were they accomplished, or were they not accomplished, or are they still in progress? It's just a really good way for students to set goals and obtain those goals. And so they're going to do this each quarter. You do it also for second quarter, third, and fourth. Again, I did not put these in the notebook, but it is a good idea that you do have these in the notebook so that students know how to set goals. Same thing with the reflection. It is up to you how many times you want to use the reflection. You can use the reflection every single time you go over standard and you want students to reflect on what they learned. Draw an example and give a visual. This comes in handy for students to really think about what they learned about the lesson and just reflect upon the lesson. Okay, so here's my table of contents. You will see I printed this in black and white. I wanted you to see the difference between black and white. You can color, you can have students color. They're going to fill out the table of contents by standard, the description, and the page number. I actually took me 4 pages to get everything. This one I printed in color so that you can see the difference between black and white and in color. So if your school doesn't print in color, it's perfectly fine. Students can color and it still looks really good. So here's table of contents. Okay, now at our school we start with number sense as our first unit. I know the Common Core Standard starts with ratios and proportional relationships. So you will have it to where you can either start with number sense or you can start with ratios. That is up to you. But the very first thing that I have for every standard is I give the standards, and then I also give the essential questions. What are important questions that students need to know, or what are they going to be learning? Key vocabulary words. I also put here for their test dates. When are they going to be pre-tested, post-tested, and have their vocabulary quiz? Some of you may not do a pre-test. That's fine. Then you don't need to add anything there. It's nice for students to have a spot to know where to write in the date, so they can look back at that, know when the test is, and study. I also put a spot for their test scores so that they don't forget their test scores. So pre-test, post-test, and vocabulary quiz. I also do sell the 7th grade assessments. I have pre-test, post-test, and vocabulary quizzes for every single standard. So if you're interested in that, I have that. I also started the page numbers right here. So I started with page 1, and then we're going on to page 2. You will see that I don't have anything on the left sides here. The reason why I did this is because I wanted you to know that there's different ways that you can use the left side. Again, if you wanted to use the reflections, so going back to the reflections, if you wanted to use this page and have students cut out this page and they can glue it on the left page, that way they have a reflection of what they learned from the right side. You can also have students draw pictures, anything like that that you want, so they can represent what they learned. So this is page 2. You'll see students, I prefer students using colored pencils. However, they could use markers, crayons, pencil. It's up to you however you want to do it. The standard is stated, And then there's I can statements. The I can statements are given to you in the answer key. You will be provided with the answer key, and it tells you what students need to write for the I can statements. You can change that. If you don't like the I can statement, you can always change that. It's nice for students to have so that they know what they are learning for that lesson. So here's number line. I'm going to go through these a little quickly so that you can see what I have. Adding and subtracting integers visually here on a number line. And then I do have some foldables where students are going to be solving adding and subtracting integers. This is a cutout activity. Students are going to cut out ice cream scoops. They are going to place them in order from least to greatest, and then they are going to add up all the numbers and total it on the cherry. So the cherry is the total of all the answers. More numbered line. This is another activity. Students are cutting out and pasting on the number line where rational numbers belong on the number line. This is another activity where students are adding fractions on the number line, and you will see they will be adding fractions, cutting out the little turkeys that they have and putting them where they belong. This is another great activity for students when it comes to knowing the number line. Adding and subtracting decimals. This is adding fractions using circles. Now we're getting into LCM and GCF, least common denominator and greatest common factor. And you will see here as well. Here's an example of the greatest common factor. So students are going to glue this on I did a piece of construction paper since they needed to cut this out. So you'll see that I have some construction paper in here that you will need if you do the 3-ring binder. So you would, factors of 64, we have all our factors of 64, and this is what they have in common from 64 and 96, which the greatest is 32. So it gives students a little bit of hands-on activities and practice, lots of practice. Here's adding and subtracting fractions using a common denominator. This is another activity where students are cutting out gumballs, and they're going to be placing them in either gumball machine. This is gumball machine 1, gumball machine 2, and they're going to reduce the fractions, and if it reduces to 3/4, they will put them in here. If it reduces to 1/4, they will put them in there, and then they will answer these questions involving that. It's a pretty fun activity for students. Absolute value. Here's absolute value vocabulary. You're going to give a definition, an example, a drawing, and a non-example. This right here is I have the template here. When you buy the notebook, it's at the very end of the file, and you can use this for any other vocabulary word that you like. You can use the templates. So I want to show you that there's more foldables, that it's up to you where you want to add those. Okay, and then this one's ordering rational numbers. Students are going to cut these out, place them where they belong. These are numbers greater than -3. These are numbers equal or less than -3. And then they're going to write what they learned. Dealing with multiplying and dividing integers. Now, what I did is I actually had all this extra space right here. So I had students write in some notes. So if you feel like there's more that you would like to go over, you have that opportunity to have students add in more on there. This is multiplying and dividing integers. If it's going to become a positive product or quotient, you will place it over here with positive, or if it's going to be negative. And then students will also write what they learned. This is division of rational numbers. Here we are on a number line. We are multiplying and dividing rational numbers using a number line. Here we're using fraction bars. I know that's something that's really big, is using students learning how to divide rational numbers using fraction bars. And here's just some extra practice. Multiplying fractions, there's 3 steps that I wrote down. You can always change them. Again, in the answer key, you will have the actual answers, and you can change that. Here's an example for students, and then they're going to solve some problems. Here's some problems that they're going to just practice. Dividing fractions, same as the multiplying fractions. Then they're going to have practice. This pretty much is like a review of operations on rational numbers, so multiplying, addition, there's division and subtraction. But it's off of word problems. So here they're going to be using word problems. This is a review, just a quick review for students, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Now, these students absolutely love. These are, it's a vocabulary matching activity. Students will be given the cell phones that actually have a definition, and then the top right here will be on another piece of paper. Students will cut those out, and they will have to match the vocabulary word to the definition. And you'll see right here 1C. So this one ended up being 1C. So what is a numerator? The number on top of a fraction. This is a great way for students to be able to study for a vocabulary quiz. Like I said, I actually have these vocabulary words I have in my store on a vocabulary quiz for each standard. So that's up to you if you'd like to look at that. It's just students really love the cell phones. They think they're really cute. So, okay. On to ratios and proportional relationships. You already saw this on Number Sense. I give the dates of the assessments, and the student filled out what they received on those. So this one's looking at unit rate, determining the unit rate. Here we're looking at unit rate, but with speed. This is another activity, a cutout activity, where students will be given these answers on the side, and they're going to cut them out, and they're going to glue them right here based off of answers. They're going to be matching them. So this is unit rate as well. Like I said, it's an activity, so it's a really fun activity for students. Proportional relationships. Markdowns, which is discounts. We're also going to be looking at the better deal. This is still a discount, but you're comparing 2 items in the same item and determining which store would give you the better deal. Markups. Just more markups, just practice. Sales tax. Going to be practicing sales tax. Sales tax activity just gives you a receipt, and you're going to determine how much change you're going to have after purchasing some items. Tip. Here's another tip. Here we're looking at percent increase and percent decrease. Simple interest. And then here's a simple interest, more practice, where students are comparing 2 banks to see which one would be the better bank to choose based off of you want to pay the least amount of interest. So this is a great activity as well. And then the cell phones. Again, this is the vocab is after every single standard, so students can practice their vocab. For example, what is a selling price? The amount a customer pays for an item. So great way for students to study. Getting into expressions and equations. This same thing, this is a unit overview, the dates, how the student did on the test and the quiz. Expressions and equations, this is linear expressions. Students are determining the area. In these problems, they are going to have to be doing the distributive property and combining like terms. There is some room right here where you can add some additional notes if you want to, or some extra practice. That is up to you. Here's just some practice. Give students just a little bit more practice. Here is an activity. This is a gaming activity where students are pretending that they are playing a game and they need the code. So you'll see the code up here. Problem number 1, they need to determine, here's the problem, and they need to determine which one is the answer. Here I can factor out a 3, so I get 3, and then in parentheses is x plus 4, so my answer was up above, so you shade in the arrow up above. And then you go on to problem number 2, and then 3, 4, and 5. So you can determine what the code is. Writing expressions, just word problems, and you're going to write some expressions. Distance with rational numbers, it's just looking at real world problems and determining distance, adding, subtracting rational numbers. Here we are setting up proportions to solve real world problems. Here you are going to solve equations, two-step equations with modeling. It gives an example, and then you're going to have your students go and do their own modeling. We do the modeling before they're given the actual procedure on how to solve the two-step equations, which gives an example here. Since I had room on the side, I told students I would like them to check their answer. So you can see they put check answer and they take their solution and they substitute it in for the variable and see if it works, if it satisfies the equation. And so it's a great way for them to check their answers. Okay, and then your turn. This is just more practice. Two-step equations. Now we get into two-step inequalities. Students are going to be writing the different inequalities. Steps, again, these are in the answer key so that you know what steps I have written down. This is just practice. This is practice for graphing two-step inequalities. And then this is a activity for two-step inequalities. I'm sorry, one-step inequalities. These are not two-step inequalities. Students will be cutting and pasting where these belong. For example, this says closed circle to the left. Any of these inequalities that have a closed circle to the left, they are going to glue in there. And then this is their expressions and equations, vocabulary matching activity. Now we're on to geometry. Same thing. I give them the test dates and they fill out what their scores. So this is for geometry, volume of a cube. They're looking at a scale drawing and they're going to be determine the volume based off of a scale drawing. Here I would give students a ruler and a protractor and let students determine, is it possible to construct a triangle given certain measurements or angles. So that's something that is nice to have. This is a activity where students had problems on a piece of paper and you have them cut it out and then they have to solve the problems and determine if it creates a triangle or if it does not. Now, for example, this one, 45 degrees, and 90 degrees does create a triangle because it all the degrees add up to 180 degrees. So you would put that in, creates a triangle. And then this one right here, these measurements, 5 inches, 12 inches, and 14 inches do not create a triangle. So you would put those with not a triangle. Slicing three-dimensional objects. Here we have area and circumference of a circle. This right here is the actual proof of area of a circle. I give students a circle, they cut it out, and they color half of these sections one color and the other half another color. They will line it up. They will try to get as best they can as a rectangle. We know the area of a rectangle is base times height. We know the base right here is half of the circumference, and we know that the height is the radius. So they will multiply those and just see that the area of a circle is pi r squared. It's just a really cool activity for students to make that connection. Here's different angles. Students are going to be solving for missing angles. And then here's the different types of angles: supplementary, complementary, vertical, and adjacent. So you can just write on both sides some information about the angles. Here are some drawings of the angles. So for example, complementary angles. We know complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. So here we have a 90-degree angle for the sum of angle A and angle B. So it's just nice to have that students see the different kinds of angles. Here we have volume and surface area of three-dimensional objects, and then geometry of the vocabulary matching activity. So students will match those. I did not have enough room, so we have them on the back as well. Last standard. So we're looking at probability and statistics. Same thing. I don't think I need to go over that again. Random sample. Students are determining if there's a random sample. Inferences. Students are going to draw some inferences. Comparing two different types of data to see which one had a higher average cells. So that's for probability and statistics. Also, students are going to be doing mean, median, mode, and range. And this is a box whisker. Students are going to be doing median, lower quartile, upper quartile, minimum, and maximum. Here we have measures of center. We have our foldables for mean, median, mode, and range. Here's another activity where students are going to cut out the likelihood. So here, impossible is 0 and 0%. So they would cut these three out on it's a different piece of paper, and they'd have to match it to here. Unlikely, we know, is 1/4 chance, 25%, and so on. So that's something that they get to do. Color the marbles and give the percent, the fraction, the percent, and the likelihood of an event happening. Pretty much the same thing here with its probability determining the chance that an event will occur. So here it says, it is certain that I will randomly choose a blue marble. So of course all the marbles are going to be blue, so students color those in, and they say, well, there's 12 out of 12, which equals 1, so 100%. So it is certain that you are going to choose a blue marble. Probability of a chance event. Probability model. Probabilities of compound events. And then this is the last page of the notebook where it has compound events. You're looking at these different options that you have and figuring out how many combinations there are. You're writing what you learned. Vocab, matching again for the probability and statistics. You'll see it's also on this side. And then the very last page I have is, this is also included, it's this school year. Students are going to look back on the school year and write their accomplishments, what they've learned, things they've learned about themselves, something that they're going to miss. It's just a reflection on the entire year. And you can add in anything into the notebook. If there's more that you'd like to add to the end, that's up to you. I hope you enjoyed seeing my notebook, and if you have any questions at all, you can email me. You'll see my email on my website. So please go ahead and give me an email. All right, thank you.